So the formula you might want to use for the rhombus is, again, something like this, diagonal 1 times diagonal 2 divided by 2. But remember, if they give you the height and the base, just go ahead and use them. Okay, it's up to you. Any questions? All right, well, let's see if you can use them. What are we looking at here? What type of object? Well, it's definitely not a triangle. A lot of people mistake it for a parallelogram. It is a trapezoid. Our formula for trapezoid: height, base 1 plus base 2. Again, divided by 2 because we only have half of that object that we had in red earlier. Well, let's figure it out. Do we know the height? Is it the 9, the 7, the 15, or the 21? It's the 7 because it hits at a right angle. Very good. Base 1 and base 2, does it matter which one you consider base 1 and base 2? No. But remember, the bases are the parallel ones. So 15 plus 21 divided by 2. Order of operations tells you to do what first? Parentheses. So 7 times 36 divided by 2. So you go ahead, you multiply that out, you divide it by 2. Actually comes out to be a relatively nice number. What is it? 126, I've been told. Who believes they know the label? Okay, you're telling me it's millimeters squared, but then I have a question. This was millimeters, correct? So was that. So was that. Don't we have 3 millimeters in the problem? So how come it's not millimeters cubed? Oh, that's right, we're only adding these two. So this is millimeters here and millimeters there. Somebody in the other class told me that it was 2 millimeters. No, the 2 is just a 2. All right. So you do take millimeters times millimeters, which is millimeters squared, divided by 2, and that's why it is millimeters squared. Okay, good job. Any questions? Okay, what do we have here? Well, we have a hybrid. The orange object is square. The blue one is a rhombus. Well, let's do the square first, because it's probably the easier of the two. Area of a square is base times height. So that's 7 right there, that's 7 right there, that's 7 right there, and so is that. So you take base times 8, well, there's your right angle combining them, so 7 times 7 is 49. We'll put square units. Any questions how I got 49 square units for the square? Pretty straightforward. Now remember, the rhombus, you actually have 2 different formulas you can use. You can use base times height if that's what you're given, or diagonal 1 times diagonal 2 divided by 2. Which one's probably going to be more helpful here? The base times height or the diagonal one? I think the diagonal one, because if that's 4 up top right here, how much is this one down here? 4, and if that's 6, this over here is 6. Are we in agreement with that? So it's an entire diagonal 1 times the entire diagonal 2, all divided by 2, is probably the best way to use that formula. So let's say that this one here is diagonal 1. How long is that? 8. We'll say the other way is diagonal 2, and the entire diagonal is 12, and then divide by 2. Now there's a lot of different ways you can do that particular one, but I'm nervous with the distributing of that half. And so that's why I'm writing them this way. Okay? So you do that math, and you get 48 square units. So the answer is not 48 square units, it's not 49 square units either. You have to take those 2 answers and add them together. Square units plus square units is square units. 8 plus 9 is 17. 97 square units. Notice when I did units squared plus units squared, I didn't make it units to the 4th. Again, many of you do way better in this class when you have that. Well, if I give you x squared plus x squared, then it gets a little interesting. And weird things start to happen. So please keep that in mind next time you deal with variables. Any questions so far? All right. I like problem 3a. When I first made it, I was like, oh, that's kind of a typo. I should probably move that 8 so it's much more obvious what it is for. But you should be able to tell what it's for. Although my particular problem up here has something missing that yours has in it. And that is a right angle right there. So how much is 8? Where is 8? Is 8 from, say, here to there? Is that 8? That can't possibly be right. Because you have a right triangle right here that has a hypotenuse of 7. So can that side right over there be 8? No. So guess what? 8 is, and has no choice but to be, that entire side. So what we have to do now is, this is a triangle. This entire figure is a triangle. And the formula, base times height divided by 2. Because again, we only have half of that figure. But you have to be very careful which one you consider the base and which one you consider the height. What two numbers should I use? I've got a 5, a 7, a 4, and an 8. Which of the two numbers will I be using? 5 and 7 is incorrect. The 4 and 8, because your base and your height have to come together at a right angle, and those are the only two that actually, for sure, come together at a right angle. And that's another reason I like this problem. That's why I leave the 5 and the 7 in there, to see if you'll use it. And I'll explain why that can't be right in a second. So A is 16 centimeters squared. Again, it's centimeters squared because you took centimeters times centimeters and just divided by a 2. You didn't divide by 2 centimeters. Now, the reason that it can't be 5 and 7 is because many of you are thinking that that's a right angle down there. But it can't possibly be, because 5 squared plus 7 squared does not equal 8 squared. So that big one can't possibly be a right triangle, where I know that's a right angle because it was given to you. Okay. Any questions on that one? Right. I did the whole triangle because the entire base is 8, the entire height is 4. The reason that you're struggling with it is you're used to the triangle being with the base on the bottom and the height going up. Remember, the base and the height do have to hit at a right angle, which I've made much more the way you're used to seeing it in letter B. That's how you're used to seeing the base and the height. So right here, the base is 4, but to figure out the height, well, we do have a 30, 60, 90, so you could use your cheat sheet, or you could use law signs. Sine of 30 over 4 equals sine of 60 over h. But I think it's quicker just to use that cheat sheet, which tells you to multiply by what? Square root of 3. So this is 4 square root of 3 inches for your height. So the area is base times height divided by 2. So the base we'll call 4. Height we'll call 4 square root of 3 divided by 2. What I'm going to do is show you how to get these exact in case your book ever asks that, and then we'll make sure that you can also get the decimal answer. When you take 4 times 4 square root of 3, you can take the 4 times the 4, but you can't really mess with that square root of 3. Well, so what is 4 times 4? 16 square root of 3, all divided by 2. Well, if you couldn't multiply with that square root of 3, can you really divide with it either? Not really, but you can take the 16 and divide it by 2. And 16 divided by 2 is actually a pretty nice number. It is 8. It'd be 8 square root of 3 square inches. Or in decimal form, you could actually, again, that's if they ask exact right there. In decimal form, you can actually go right back there and just type that into your calculator then and figure out what it wants you to have. Make sure, though, if you do use your calculator, to close off the parentheses for the square root of 3 if you're going to type it straight in. And what do you get for a decimal there? About 13.9 if you type that in. So you just have to read the directions and see what it wants. And again, it's inches times inches divided by 2, so it's inches squared. So any questions so far? All right, the next two are quite different. For number 1, I didn't give you a picture, and I've given you the area and asked for some of the information other than area. Well, we're talking about a trapezoid, so the first thing I would probably do is draw something that somewhat resembles a trapezoid. I'd say that somewhat resembles a trapezoid. It tells me here that the area is 50 square yards. It tells me the bases are 8 yards and 12 yards. So that's probably a pretty good picture. We know the formula, or who can remember the formula without looking back to the other side would be a good question. All right. I kind of heard it with a mix of people here. Right there, again, that's the red object that we doubled before, and we only needed half of it, and that's why that is your formula. What I would do if I were you is fill in as much as you can of that formula. But the question is asking me for the height. So the chances are I do not know what h is, at least not yet. So we'll put the h. Again, do we know base 1 and base 2? Sure. Does it matter which one's which, 8 and 12? Not really. So 8 plus 12, all divided by 2. But one other thing we do know is we do know the area. The area is 50. Any questions how I substituted that information into the formula? Now, some people just guess and check the height until it actually works out right. You could do that, I suppose, if you want. But hopefully the height's a nice number then. What draws my attention, again, is those parentheses, because that's what you're supposed to do first in order of operations. So you do 8 plus 12, which is 20. Now, it depends on how you want to do it. You can actually take the 20 and divide by 2 if you want, but that's only because this is multiplication right here. And if you think you're going to mess that up, what you probably want to do then is multiply both sides by 2, because then it'll cancel. It works out the same either way, but if you're one of those that messes up that distributing thing, you might want to do it this way. So we got 100 equals 20h. Remember, I can switch those letters around like that because multiplication is, what's that mean when you can move it? What's that property? Commutative. I commute to work, which means I move here. I go from one place to another. And then you divide by 20. H is 5 what? Why is it yards? Are you sure it's yards and not yards squared? Okay, so it goes from because it's area to because it's not area. Okay. The real reason is this is yards squared right here. This is yards. When I took it times 2, it was still yards squared divided by yards. One of them cancels, leaving you with yards. I think that knowing stuff like that may truly help you in chemistry, or perhaps physics, knowing how stuff cancels like that instead of just its area or it's not area, things like that.